Okay. Hi, YouTube. Hi, podcast listeners. Welcome to another episode of All About That Dose. I am here with Grizz, and we are excited to talk with you today more about what we spoke about last week, and that is motivation. I had a really interesting week thinking about our topic of motivation and how energy moves through us. Did you have any fun insights, Grizz, in your experiences throughout the week?
Well, my heart is open for this call. We meet again, all of our listeners out there. We're really grateful to have you on this journey with us. So I definitely wanted to give a shout out to all the new listeners and subscribers. It means a lot to Amanda and I both, you being here with us. And yeah, just having that open heart. I'm feeling a lot of the love. So excited to be here and talk about this.
Yeah, our
Open our
conversation
hearts.
last week, yeah, it kind of winded around to this idea of it all coming down to how open is your heart to channeling that universal energy flow. And yes, we were talking about motivation specifically, but really, when we are looking at how open or constricted our heart is, then that applies to every possible um, permutation, emotional permutation that informs how we move throughout our lives, how we experience and express within our lives. So today we're really honing in on that focus of open heartedness. What does it mean to have an open heart? How do we move and open our heart or constrict the heart? Is it ever necessary to do so? Or should we just aim to have a wide open heart all of the time? What do we do with this information? How do we move forward? And as it relates to motivation, when I speak about motivation, when I speak about the spiritual aspect of motivation, I am talking about specifically how we channel universal energy through us, how we access, we connect to this universal energy, and then it transmutes and filters through us, expressing through our living conscious unfolding.
I'm excited to see how this possibly expresses through some of these listeners. We have a free Facebook group, and so we're going to be doing a lot more engagement in there. So if you're listening, if you're not part of the Facebook group, or even if you are, I'm going to get in there in the next couple of days and create an opportunity for us to share more of your experience with an open heart. And so if you have any experience with how an open heart has impacted your life, we really would love to hear about it in the group or even on the comments here on YouTube. So
Absolutely. I love meeting and talking to people about all sorts of things from microdosing to how to microdose to protocols to medication to meditation to thinking about the act of healing, the art of healing, and how we integrate these ideas into our life. So, leading into today's topic, an open heart. When I talk about having an open heart, the idea for me anchors in Michael Singer's concept in the untethered soul, which is that our energy receptor where we access and channel universal energy from is in our heart. It's open or closed in our heart. And that choice to be open or closed, I think is complex. There's a lot that goes into that choice, but when we're talking about what it feels like to have an open heart versus a closed heart, I can anchor it in some metaconscious principles. And if you've been listening to the show, you've heard me reference these in a few different ways, but we look at the 7 different energy levels, of which we all have a mix of. We all have a unique mix of these. When we're talking about the energy levels, level 1 specifically is the most restricted. So these are emotions like shame, guilt, helplessness, apathy. Those are very closed states. That's where we've closed the heart, we've locked it off in order to maybe protect ourselves or um, or create safety within ourselves. And by doing that, unfortunately, we're preventing any flow. We're preventing the flow of universal energy to move through us. We've locked the door and we've closed ourselves off in there, and it's dark and there's no energy or light getting in or out. Level 1 is tricky. And we've all been in level 1. We all have level 1 energy in us in some way. We all experience it in one way or another. So that's level 1. Level 2 is a little more open: anger, resentment, frustration, and conflict. That's a little more open, but it's still highly constricted. There's not a lot of energy flow happening there, but there is a little bit. There is a little bit. It's more outwardly focused. Level 3, we get into a slightly more expansive state: forgiveness, responsibility, tolerance, cooperation. That is where we are beginning to open a little more. We're beginning to feel the flow of energy. And when we're talking about motivation, we're beginning to feel energetic momentum toward maybe some type of productivity, whether it's relational, whether it's related to work or relationships or home life, whatever's going on. Level 3 is where we really start to see some movement happening in our energetic profile. And then level 4, 5, 6, and 7, they get more and more expansive until you're completely open. Level 7, which is absolute passion, bliss, enlightenment, and that sense of oneness. So I would characterize level 7 as having a completely open, unfettered heart. All of the universal energy is able to just flow and express, and you are creating and generating and manifesting and connecting, and you are in your most powerful state. um yes, and I think, as I said before, we all have a mix of all 7 of those levels. Grizz, what do you see with these, particularly on the ceremony space, when you're looking at leading ceremonies, plant medicine ceremonies for others, working with Indigenous? How do you think they would look at or interpret this particular idea?
Yeah, I know for me, I've pushed ceremonies back because I wasn't in the right heart space to lead a group of people. And so I do know that for me personally, you really have to be clean and pure to do this work in a ceremonial setting. As far as the indigenous, the core of their most sacred ayahuasca, the story is it was their first death in their tribe. So this was a long, long time ago, thousands of years ago. The story of their first death, the most beloved king, the leader of their tribe, he died. And out of his heart grew this ayahuasca vine. And so from his heart came, was birthed, this vine, this ayahuasca vine that's their most sacred medicine. And, that right there shows me that it is all about the heart. And that's a perfect example. I mean, at the core, the foundation of what they're doing, it's coming from the heart.
That's a beautiful example of the story, the origin story of the ayahuasca plant. I haven't heard that before. I really resonate with that. And it makes me think of this idea of embodying that level 7 energy in that story to birth this like out of oneness, right? Out of oneness with the spirit births this plant. And that plant is an embodiment of that level 7 energy. And when we engage with with the plant or any plant medicine, I'd say we're tapping into, or we have the opportunity, I think, to tap into that level 7 experience. I know in my own psychedelic therapeutic journeys and experiences, level 7 has been the most transformative for me, really connecting into that space, because when we're talking about a completely open heart at that level 7, that's not a space that is sustainable to live in all the time, because if you are always in level 7, then there isn't there isn't that richness of individual expression that we are gifted by being able to experience, tap into, and connect with all of the other levels. Yes, even the lower levels. Um,
I was thinking contrast. The word contrast came up for me when you were talking, and it was in a ceremony, a vision I had, where I was getting this message that contrast is really needed to push us to other levels, other experiences. And so without that contrast, like you said, if you just lived in this certain space, I don't know if you'd have much contrast, but I think contrast is good.
yeah, absolutely. Contrast is a universal principle, I think, from yin and yang to there's this duality, which is, I think you're right. It supports this definition. It supports the learning and the growing. It gives us something to grow within, and it gives us something to change. But the interesting thing about, so when you said that, it made me think of one thing that I've kind of played with, or tried to wrap my own mind around, is this idea of duality as also being an illusion, because when we zoom out enough, we can see that the two, opposing concepts that appear like they're completely opposite and completely separate are actually the same the same material, right? It's just we're able to see two ends of the stick at one time, but it's just one piece. So I think it's an interesting thought experiment to zoom out and see that level 7 perspective, and then zoom back in and be able to see all of the shades of human existence, and see how it's all really one, and also just very perfect in how it unfolds. Yeah, that idea of contrast though is key. I think it is key, and it's how we interact with that juxtaposition of what seems like opposites in order to move forward and learn and grow and transform, for sure. And then yeah, contrast. What else? Oh yeah, the so okay, how do we then move between? So we talked about contrast, we talked about the different levels. How do we move between these levels, other than just deciding, like, I feel like a level 5 today? How do we even automatically move between levels? And there are essentially three main drivers, what I call energetic drivers, moving us around these different states of openness and constriction. And those drivers are the categories are fear, love, and grief. And when I'm talking about these categories, I am talking about these emotions as categories. Fear is an emotion, yes, but it is also kind of this umbrella topic of of a variety of emotions, right? And when we feel fear in any of its shades, it it constricts us, right? It's protective. It constricts us, closes our heart space, and and pushes us into those lower levels. Levels one, two, wherever you are, it kind of pushes you down into those levels, whatever your um, automatic patterns are around the specific version of fear that you are experiencing. And then love is the category of all sorts of things from compassion to gratitude, uh, even passion. Love, the way I look at love is that we label it as an emotion, but really what I think it is it is pure universal energy flowing in its natural state. And that feels good to us. And so because it feels good to us, we have called it love and dressed it up in all sorts of ways. But I think there is a rawness to that emotion that is energy. Love in its purest form is just universal energy that is flowing. And it's easy because its natural state is to move. And like I said, it feels good to us. So there's lots of different shades of love, but it is a driver toward expansion. A driver toward expansion. And then a really interesting piece to this, which I think is often overlooked and maybe not talked about a lot, is this idea of grief as being another energetic driver. And grief is is a way to transform our inner landscape. Grief is transformation. Whether you're grieving a person or a situation or a lifestyle or even a belief, or really anything that is gone from your life that you need to transition your self definition into a new version of your life that no longer includes active participant of that thing. And so grief is transformative and it's massive. It can be subtle, it can be shattering, but it allows us to transform the container within which we are growing. So that way we can plant new seeds. We can change into new dynamics. It opens it to be able to insert new patterns, new beliefs, new people. It opens us by when we release our attachment to the loss. Yeah, I always I hate to underplay grief because I know how painful it is. And it can feel like, we want to avoid it because it feels like it can break us. And it kind of does. It does break us. But I don't know. I don't think it breaks us in ways that aren't ready to be opened up.
Yeah, and I think for any of the listeners that are listening, there's a reason that you're on, and listening today. And so you mentioned, Amanda, planting seeds. I think that trust and surrender are kind of the threads that tie a lot of this together. And so I'm planting the seed of testing this out. My question to you is, how many times have you opened your heart in a situation where you experienced fear or grief? Something happens with your spouse. How many times have you ran towards your spouse and just gave them a hug versus how many times do we run away and pout and go in the other room? I'm guilty of it. And so I want to plant this seed because I think that experiencing this and following those breadcrumbs, we talk about why do this in our heart just in one day. I think that you will see the results of having an open heart. And so I'm just planting that seed to do that. And I'll share an experience with, or a story of the indigenous where they've experienced all three of these, this fear, this grief, all the way back to the conquistadors coming and really, decimating their tribe. And then the rubber tappers that came in and enslaved them. They made them slaves to their own land to produce the rubber. And so there was a lot of fighting amongst them. And it got to the point where the Yawanawa, the chief, he's like, hey, we got to do something different. And they were going to just keep the medicine all to themselves. They said, we're not going to share this. We're going to just heal ourselves, keep all these natural healing practices and ancient traditions to ourselves. But then he just had this epiphany where his heart started to open. And he's like, no, we need to share this medicine. We need to share these like secrets that we've been holding in our hearts, in our tribe, with the world. And he got a lot of, other tribes that were like, no, don't share this with the white people and, all the rest of the world. But he did. And it's really bringing in a lot of love, a lot of healing. He's connected with the government. They were one of the first ones to get their land demarcated by the Brazilian government. So a lot of positive things have come out of not being constricted, right? Keeping this all to themselves. They opened that up. There's a lot of fear, a lot of grief. I mean, they're sharing these traditions with people that have killed them and their family. And so, I mean, just think of what kind of like love that takes.
Yeah, I like the idea of, well, I don't know if like's the right word, but I resonate with the idea of when we choose to open, we are also choosing to allow these emotions to move through us. And when we are experiencing really big things like grief moving within us, staying open allows it to move. I think the tendency when we're feeling these really big, scary things is to close up and protect. But when we choose to open our heart and live from an open space, we allow it to move. We allow it to move within us. And even when it's excruciating, if it's moving, if it's expressing, it's going to kind of burn itself out, right? It doesn't last forever. What can happen is that if you close and push it away, it stays there. It becomes a block. It becomes dis-ease. It manifests in other ways. It finds a way to express, whether it's, maladaptive relationship behaviors or coping strategies. You're not healing, you're coping in those instances. If you want to heal, Open your heart, stay present, and allow your consciousness to do what it knows to do, and that is to align with universal flow and move the energy through you. And it will pass, and you will transform, and you will get to a new space where you can write your story. You can write your new story with an updated set of words, right? You're not using the same old words to write the new story. You've updated your dictionary when
Your
you allow
program,
the
your
Greek,
operating system.
yeah, yep,
Mm.
updating your hardware, your operating system. And that does take trust. I think trust is a big part of it. Trust that it's not going to break you. Trust that you're going to survive the intensity because you will. And uniquely with microdosing as a tool, because of the neurobiological impacts that the medicine has on our bodies, on our brains, we have an opportunity to do that with a little more safety, with a little more psychological safety, because our emergency alert system in our brain is quieter when we are using psilocybin. It's quieter, which means that we can relax a little more into the experience, even if it's intense, even if it's painful. We can relax a little more into it. The quieting of our default mode network, that self-referential ruminating part of our brain, when that's quieted down from microdosing, from psilocybin, then we're able to participate more fully and be more present and allow the energy more avenues to express. And the more avenues it can express, the sooner it's going to pass through. You have to stay present, stay aware, and feel it fully. And that's not something that we do a lot of. I mean, in my own history, I one of the most stressful questions I could be asked was, "How are you feeling?" Because I was so disconnected from myself for so much of my life, from, due to trauma and other things, but I was so disconnected from my emotional consciousness. But reconnecting with that in order to allow what needs to be expressed to express itself is key. And choosing to have an open heart is choosing to be fully present and choosing to release control, I think, too. I think control is a big part of it. Yeah. I know we all have complicated relationships with control, no matter who we are. As human beings, we want to control for our survival.
That's why I say, yeah, just give it one day, plant that seed, give up control, just test this theory out. One day,
Yeah,
stop trying to control, just open your heart and see what happens when you give up the control. It's really freeing, and it's not something that we practice or that we're taught. And so, we're just learning this. It's the new university. We're studying, and this, for me, I think is the way. And so, we have a lot of support here. It's just one day. Open the heart, give the hug instead of running away.
that's a good lesson. We were talking before the episode. I'm not going to throw you under the bus, but I thought one thing you said that was so interesting about this, or this kind of direction that our conversation went, where when we're talking about control now, but when you are attempting to have an open heart, or when you're moving throughout your day or throughout your relationships, thinking or considering or choosing into this open-heartedness, are there conditions attached to you having an open heart? They can be sneaky, they can be super sneaky, and they can live under layers. Whether it's, maybe some expectation of reciprocity, or I'm thinking of my own experience as well. Uh, Even maybe there's a perceived threat of psychological safety that you're not willing to sacrifice. So asking yourself the questions, is this, it's true for me, but how true, with a capital T, objectively, how true is it? I'm honoring the truth that's within me and my experiences. And then I'm reflecting on the garden in which that lowercase t is growing, and gaining facts, getting the facts. So I think in a practical way, that can be a good way to start thinking about, or start noticing, start building awareness around, what attachments do you have when it comes to open heartedness. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Grizz. I didn't say anything about you or your story, but I just thought that was an interesting concept that we stumbled upon just before this episode.
Yeah, no, I think it's great because I think control has a lot to do with it. We put
Mhm.
these like conditions or definitions, and I consider that control. Like if they do this, then they love me, or if they do this, then I'll do that. And it's all like control instead of just like, I go back to the hug example, like we can make up all kinds of stories in my head or in our heads where you don't, all kinds of reasons why not to give the hug. But if you just open your heart and you just trust, give up control, get rid of all the conditions and the definitions. Just go to your heart, that capital T that you talk about. The truth is we really, it's all love. And when you go do give that hug, I've experienced fireworks like energetically. It's like a total shift in vibration. It's a total shift in your pattern. And then boom, just it's fertile ground for magical experiences to start coming into your life. And then that is the reflection that keeps us going and gives us motivation to keep doing the open heart. But it takes action. First step, trust.
Yeah, trust for sure. And I think there's probably a lot of layers to it. A lot of layers of awareness that can be peeled back to see where you are um with the conditions, or with the control. So considering things like, what needs do you have? Is there a fear that need isn't going to be met? Um, yeah, is there something that you're trying to control? Is there some attachment to a particular outcome, or a particular way that something unfolds? Is there some grieving that needs to be done? Do you need to let go of something in order to get to that place of trust, just having openness? But to speak to your point, Grez, about taking action, I think that can be a huge way to support shifting from the outside in while you're doing the work from the inside out. So if we're engaging in behaviors that are going to support more of what we want, which is connection or love, or any number of higher vibrational things moving in that toward that healing space, then taking actions to support creating that externally while we're doing the work internally is a powerful combination. And it creates a loop, a positive loop for us that can reinforce these choices and ability to trust, ability to let go of those conditions, to build awareness and then let go of the conditions we notice, the need to control that we start to see, whether it's subtle or not, start to see those in order to release the power they have over the way we attach to others, our attachment style. And it's all about an open heart. It really is. It's all about having and cultivating and integrating an open heart. So when we're talking about integrating an open heart today, yeah, practice. Take today and just practice. Open, take take actions that support you experiencing an open heart while you're also building awareness and surrendering and trusting. Because when you live your life with an open heart, that does not mean that you're never going to get hurt. You will get hurt, and it will be painful, and it will pass. And you will learn, you will grow, you will grieve, you will transform, you will continue to evolve over and over and over again until the game is over.
And it's never over. The learning never stops. Sorry, spoiler alert.
Right. Yeah. Yes, that is true. I guess I was thinking like death, but that felt a little macabre. It's not over until you die. And then who knows? Maybe it's not even over then. Um, yeah, I feel like I have a couple of good things I can go do after our chat today. Go give some hugs and start to create external infrastructure that supports the internal shifting and moving and creates safety. So I feel like I can have this open heart space, particularly for people who have trauma in their history, maybe, or other mental health challenges they're working through. Safety is huge. Having internal safety is essential. So start to think about, what does safety mean? What does it feel like? How can you create safety so you can live with an open heart, because you can withstand whatever happens. You can withstand everything that happens. You are stronger than you think you are. I promise.
Let's go give some hugs. I give everybody here hugs. And if it helps, a pro tip, you can go hug a tree. And that can give you the energy and motivation to hug that person that you're kind of not wanting to hug. So let's go give some hugs.
Yes, I love that. And then next week, tune in. We're going to be talking about conscious constriction. So is there ever a use case to close? Do we ever want to close on purpose? And when do we do that? And why do we do that? And also, we're going to continue to talk about grief and how grief transforms us, and really get into some very interesting nuances about grief in some new ways that maybe you haven't ever heard of or thought about or considered before. So thank you so much for being with us this week. And we will see you next Thursday.
Woohoo. Happy Lionsgate today, everyone. 8/8. See you next week.
Bye.